start talking about Oprah Winfrey. Sunday night at the 75th annual Golden Globe Awards, she uses a platform to launch Oprah Winfrey into the national discussion regarding a possible presidential run in 2020. Now, this is all her sycophants, all the folks in lamestream media that listen to her speak at the 75th Golden Globes Award and thinks that she would be a perfect fit for the presidency. Well, as is the case in political circles, when someone's name is brought forward, especially someone as prominent as Oprah Winfrey, you got to figure that there's going to be some investigating going on, and you got to figure that eventually some things are going to come out. And with Oprah Winfrey, it's not like Donald Trump where they have to dig and dig and dig and dig and dig and they haven't found anything yet. With Oprah Winfrey, it was so easy. I mean, these things were coming out on Monday, and here it is Thursday already, and these things are still coming out. I have this story by Ryan Saavedra over at the Daily Wire. I'm using a right-wing and ultra-white white supremacist site, according to some of my antagonists on Facebook, that can't trust it because it's right, it's conservative. But when they put the facts out in there and they back them up with citing where they got their sources and stuff like that, they can't be trusted. But that's a side note there. I'm going to joke about that for quite a while here because I was debating with a gentleman on Facebook most of the week. And it makes no sense, totally regressive in his politics, works for the government too, it goes figures, right? And will not even read the story if it comes from a site that he believes to be right-leaning. And to me, you're not getting the full story, and I do read from both sides of the street. Of course, I was accused not, so I'll be joking about this for quite a while. I'll get a couple miles out of it. Anyway, this article is named Top 5 Oprah Fails, Calling for People to Die, Racism, Hoaxes, Allowed Praise of Jihad on Show, and more. Now, this, folks, this isn't just a fail. I mean, this was all searchable and findable, okay? As Shapiro noted, Winfrey is a hardcore leftist, and her image is based on being a uniter, not a divider, which would take a huge hit if she got political. There is an abundant amount of information available on Oprah, which will be used against her if she decides to run for office. Here's some of Oprah's top fails. Now, before I get into that article there, we are over a year removed from last year's elections. We are quite a few years into the new Main Street media, okay, and trying to leave behind the vestiges of the Lame Street media with Project Veritas's investigations into the Lame Street media. They're taking huge hits. They're taking huge hits because they're lying on stories, creating fake news, not telling you the whole truth. So the new media out here on the internet, like the Daily Wire, like the Daily Caller, like the Daily Dispatch, these other news sites that I use that I've investigated, researched, looked into, checked out their links and stuff like that, and so they cite their sources. So I'm going to continue to use this. But here at the Golden Globe speech. Now this is another Daily Wire article. And it's by Ben Shapiro, so at least he links in there, and I went over and looked at it, and he has some other links, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but Hollywood and the mainstream media promoted Oprah as brave following her speech in the 75th Golden Globes Award, but as Shapiro pointed out, what the hell kind of risk was she taking? Shapiro told Fox News' Martha McCallum she was standing in front of an entire town filled with sexual abusers and harassers. She said nothing about it for 20 years. She was being cheered by people who said nothing about it for 20 years. And she's pretending that she's leading the fight. Oprah did not lead the fight against the culture of sexual misconduct in Hollywood. And she cannot use the excuse of, I was afraid of what might have been done to my career, because she is one of the biggest people in media. She has little to fear. Shapiro continued, well, I was under the impression that most of us agreed with that stuff when this stuff was first broke, and she lauded the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Where were they reporting on the sexual harassment and the abuse of scandals for the last 20 years? It was literally their job to cover Hollywood, and yet it took the New Yorker and Roman Farrow to uncover all this stuff. Where was the Hollywood Press Association that was receiving such plaudits at the hands of Oprah Winfrey? Again, a woman who was good friends with Harvey Weinstein being cheered by Meryl Streep, a woman who gave a standing ovation to Roman Polanski. All good questions, folks. And she actually has become part of this movement. They all knew. They all knew. Hashtag they all knew. And she's one of them. They all knew. Oprah suggests Americans are racist even if they do not have ill will towards black people. Again, a blanket statement. This is from Breitbart.com. Another one of them right-wing websites you're not supposed to use, folks. In a 2013 interview with CNN, Anderson Cooper, Oprah Winfrey, and Forrest Whitaker, stars in Butler, strongly hinted that Americans were racist, even if they don't have any ill will towards the black community. Well, that's a pretty bold blanket statement, isn't it, that all Americans are racist? Or Americans are racist? Again, this will come back to haunt her in political circles, because the new media is not going to let this go, because she said these things, and she said even worse. Number 3, Oprah gives platform to an Islamic scholar who says Islamic Jihad is only a spiritual battle, not a holy war. Now, this was over off Breitbart also. Veron Soni, the Dean of Religious Life at the University of Southern California, appeared on Winfrey's Belief series, where she explained that all of the horrifying acts of violence committed in the name of Islam were all just a great big misunderstanding of a core Islamic belief. One of the most misunderstood concepts of Islam is jihad, which many people interpret as a holy war, Sony said. But there's nothing holy about war. What jihad actually represents is an internal struggle, the battle that is raging in our own heart. And all of our religious traditions talk about the internal struggle. In that respect, jihad is not just Muslim idea, but is in reality a human condition that flies in the face of over 109 verses found in the Quran that talk about killing the infidels. That's not doing things in your heart, folks. That's external. She allowed this on her show. Number 2, you notice we're in a countdown here. Oprah makes absolutely not true racism allegations against a store clerk in Europe. Now, I remember when this story popped off, and it was over the internet, but the mainstream media left it alone. Winfrey, the most powerful woman in the world, accused a clerk at a small store in Europe of being racist towards her, but refused to offer any identifying information of the alleged incident. Evidently, the store and the clerk were discovered, and they said Winfrey was a liar. Now, this actually comes out of the Hollywood Reporter. Hardly a far right-wing news source. This is not true. This is absurd. I would never say something like that to a customer. Really, never. Good manners and politeness are the alpha and omega in this business, the woman told Sonntagsblick, whatever that is. It is absolutely not true that I declined to show her the bag on racist grounds. And he goes on in there. And Winfrey tried to get out of the incident, which could have ruined that poor girl's life, by giving a bogus apology in which she did not actually apologize for her actions, but apologized for the story getting blown up, for which she, of course, was responsible. It was her actions, folks, that did that. Number 1, Oprah says older generation just has to die to solve the problem of racism. And this is an ongoing theme with Oprah Winfrey and a lot of the leftists of color, as it were. And this comes from newsbusters.org. It's an MRC site. Another one of them far right-wing sites over there, okay? In a 2013 interview with the BBC, hardly a right-wing site in and of themselves, the BBC, Winfrey said that entire generations have to just die, or just have to die to cure the problem of racism. After Winfrey told the BBC, Will Gompertz, that she thought that racism has gotten better, Gompertz asked Winfrey if she thought the problem was solved. Winfrey responded, of course the problem is not solved. You know, as long as people can be judged by the color of their skin, problem's not solved. As long as there are people who still, there's a whole generation. I say this, I know, I said this, you know, for apartheid South Africa, I said this for my own, you know, community in the South. There are still generations of older people who were born and bred and maintained it in that prejudice and racism. They just have to die. And there's a video that goes along with all this, folks. Now, she might have grown up, and I've read some short biographies about her. Matter of fact, the Rubin Report has a short video about her growing up and stuff like that. But you can't say that's the case with her today. It may have been when she was a young lady down south, and okay, you had to go through that. And yeah, there's some racist folks around here. You're never going to get rid of racism totally, but it's not institutional anymore. It's not systemic. It's very pocketed in America. It's very, very small percentage-wise of American. I mean, it's, you know, we're talking about 0.0001%. And here she's a black woman, one of the most successful black women in the history of the world, especially America, and she's still talking about racism. And they're the ones, honestly, folks like Oprah, these leftists, these regressors are the ones that are always talking about racism, no matter what their skin color is. They're always talking about racism. And that actually is a racist statement, folks. It really is. Want this older generation to die. And you know she's talking about white people. She didn't come out and say it, but you know she's talking about white people. Now, one more thing here real quick before I wrap up this short video here. This is another Daily Caller. The other one was a Daily Wire. This is a Daily Caller article about extremely inconvenient photos for Oprah if she decides to run for president by Benny Johnson, posted on the 8th of this month. The media world is going gaga over the thought of a potential 2020 presidential bid from Oprah Winfrey. After Winfrey delivered a stirring speech Sunday evening at the Golden Globes, Monday's headlines were all about the talk show icon. The speculation is a welcome distraction for Hollywood's elites who have faced an ongoing industry crisis after the fallout of the wave of sexual assault bombshells. However, if Oprah runs, she will likely face her own questions over enabling and palling around with some Hollywood's now infamous sexual predators. In particular, Oprah has maintained a close professional relationship with Harvey Weinstein over the past 2 decades. Weinstein saw his career go down in flames after a dozen of women came forward to accuse him of sexual harassment and assault, and Winfrey's chummy relationship with Weinstein has been pointed out by the number of Twitter users who have posted photos of Oprah kissing and hugging the notorious sexual predator. And again, you got a powerful, powerful woman in the media and a lot of friends in Hollywood. You can't tell me she didn't know. You can't tell me she didn't know what was going on. And if she stayed silent, then she's part of the problem. She's part of the problem. I'm just going to scroll down through here. Some of these pictures, you're just going to see them there. And it's, again, and they have some captions in that. I'm not going to go over them all. But real chummy with Weinstein. Real friendly with Mel Streep. And one of the things I want to point out here is not a problem with her being chumming with Mel Streep or anything like that. But when Roman Polanski, a convicted child rapist who fled the country before his sentence was carried out and is in self-imposed exile, gets a standing ovation from almost everybody in the room. Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson comes to mind. There was a bunch of other people in there that applauded him. Ah, yay! And here he is a convicted sex offender that has not faced justice yet, and they're still applauding him. They knew what was going on. They didn't do anything about it, and this is a problem. And she is going to have to face the music, as it were. She's going to have to face the music, as it were, if she runs for the president, because this stuff is not going to go away. You guys have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next video.